Hi there, we're back. So this is the continuation of our lesson and under the media and information literacy. So for today, we're going to discuss media and information sources in language. So before that, again, this is Sir Ariel. So do not forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you will be updated to all the videos that I'm going to upload. So greetings to all the viewers, and hopefully you're doing great and continue to seek information. All right, so let's begin. So this lesson is about the sources in languages. So, what are our objectives for this one? So first of all, we're going to compare what are those sources of media and information, and the activity for this lesson is you're going to interview an elder or the professional in the community that has a knowledge about media and information, specifically the indigenous sources. And then how are we going to evaluate the media and information? Either codes, convention, and messages, how it is produced, and how we're going to assess the codes, convention, and messages, and what how are going to identify the different producers and stakeholders of media and information. Now, before we continue, we're going to have our exercise. So I would like you to identify what information presented on the photo that I'm going to show you. So you can just post it, and then you think what source it is. The options are primary source, secondary source, and indigenous source. So identify what sources or source that I'm going to show to you. So the first image is this one. Yeah, so what do you think this particular source? So if you're thinking a book, so that is a secondary source. Second, artifacts. So these are primary source. Third image, social media, internet. So this is secondary source. Now this one is a traditional dance from indigenous peoples, definitely indigenous source. Investment portfolio, so this is definitely a secondary source. All right, so those are our uh, different images. Now let's identify one by one on what are these sources. So when you say primary, these are immediate, first-hand accounts of topic from people who had direct connection with it. Primary source can include text of laws and other original documents. So when you say primary sources, so these are the original documents. Okay, so the person or individual has a direct involvement, or they normally witness a certain type of events. So we can consider that particular situation as the primary source of information. So if you're there in that particular moment, then you're the primary source of the information. Okay, so it's not yet passed from one person to another. So you're the first. It was the first time that you encountered that, and we also call it the original documents because, like the artifact, so that is the original materials they use in the historical times. So we consider that as the primary sources. So specifically, um, other sources like interviews, surveys. So that is the raw data we gathered from um, the individuals or the person or the interviewee. So we are the first one, the first individual, the first person to witness the information from them. So that is primary sources. So if you can think of an example, that would be great. But I have here a few. So newspaper reports by reporters who witness an event, who quote people who did that particular um, events, speech, diaries, letters, and interviews. So that is an example, or those are examples of primary sources. On the other hand, the secondary sources, these are second-hand accounts. So if the primary is the first, this is the second-hand accounts about a particular event, person, or information. And take note, it has been analyzed and interpreted. So the primary, if you're going to analyze it, interpret, review, comment, reorganize, is the word reorganize? Okay. As long as you analyze the primary sources, so we are now considering that as a secondary source. Okay, so meaning the information you gather already been um, arranged into something that is another form of information. It is passed through from one person to another. It has been edited by someone else, so that is already a secondary sources. Okay, what are the example of this? So yeah, if you can think of an example, that would be better. Also, secondary provide another angle and analysis from the perspective of another person. So some history books or textbooks, also an example of that. The internet is the best example as well. Research studies, thesis, dissertation, what else? Articles, autobiographies, and many more. Yeah, magazines, internet, academic journals, periodicals. So those are examples of secondary sources. Now, indigenous sources, we call it the indigenous because it actually exists naturally in a particular region or environment, originating or occurring naturally in a particular place or region. So we also call it the native source when you say indigenous sources. So these are pretty much I don't know if you're already familiar with it, but these sources is should be preserved because it involves the culture and tradition of a certain community, like the different tribes that we have in our country. So they have their own culture and tradition for each region or places. Now, the most common example we have for the indigenous sources, like the festivals, fiestas, the folk tales, the dances, traditional dances. So those are the most common sources of indigenous. Okay, so we have here legends, folktale, epic, mythology, oral tradition, and culture. There you have it. So it should be preserved and it should be continuously circulating because it's very important. Without them, our culture and tradition will not that reach in terms of what we have in the different regions in our country. And we normally develop that for the tourism part so that other foreign individuals will definitely appreciate what we really have in our country as Filipinos. So those are for media and information sources. So I hope you understood what are those sources. So I know you already discussed that in the previous year levels. It's just a review. Now for the media and information language, so we say media language, these are codes, convention, formats, symbols, narrative structures that indicates the meaning of media message to an audience. Now, the most common are the symbolic codes and convention. So if I'm going to show you this picture, what will you think? You can post the video and think of the meaning. You might probably thinking the red rose symbolizes blood, symbolizes anger, or symbolizes romance or love, something like that. Now, if it's a white rose, purity, cleanliness, and so on. In this part, the clenched fist, this is anger, madness. Yep. The third image, so no jaywalking, or it's not allowed to walk in some areas, something like that. So based on that, we call it the symbolic code. So it actually gives us a meaning of the particular objects or code or images that when we see it, we normally know what the meaning of that without any writing on it or any text that you see, but you already identify what it represents. So that is symbolic code. So there is a certain meaning that we already understood. It could be an object, a setting, a body language, a clothing, a color, and so on. So it shows what is beneath the surface of what we see. It's beyond what we normally understand. Did I say it correctly? Okay. So example, we already provided example. Another example for symbolic codes, probably the sign about wet floors, no smoking, the traffic signs. So if it's red, you need to stop. Green, you have to go. And what's the other color? Orange. Yeah. So those are codes. What else? The sign for peace, using the finger. If you the sign for approve, okay, yeah, those are the different signs, and many more that you may think of. You can put it on the comment section. Now, for the convention, these are the standard or norms that acts as a role governing behavior. This is the standard that we already accepted in our society, in our community, that we normally do in terms of using the media and information. Sometimes, let's say if we are having a dinner, so before we start to eat, we take a picture of the food and we post it to the social media. I don't know if that's already a behavior that we do, that already accepted by the social media community or the digital community. Or what else? If there's an event, so we posted a picture about that for the others to be informed. But we should always be cautious, and we know what are our limitations in order to avoid something else. So those are the conventions. So the standard or the norms that we do usually, and it is already accepted by the society and the community. Now, what are the parts of that? So we have the message that we're trying to share with everybody. So of course there is an intended audience to whom the message that you are sharing. And then the producers, who are the producers? Are they the influencers? Are they the vloggers? Are they the teachers? And many more. Stakeholders, those are the beneficiaries of the information. So I have the meaning here. The information sent to the receiver from source, the group of consumers for whom the message was constructed. Producers, the people engaged in the process of creating and putting that media contents. Stakeholders like the libraries, archives, museums, internet, and other relevant providers, information providers. That is it for the media and information sources in language. So I hope you learned something from that. If you have comments, suggestions, you can put it in the comment section. Thank you guys for listening and watching. Hope you learned something from this. So the next video, we're going to continue with a new lesson. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon. You have a good day, guys.